us in discussion. So I think that we will do it in a minute, just that we can also be in more real contact, not only with you via chat, but you can also use your microphone and speak to us. So it's 2:00, so I think that it's time to begin. As I told you, I'm Barbara Krivosheyev. I'm from Policy of Journalist Association.
And my name is Zbigniew Kuliak. I'm also from Young Journalists Association Polis.
Would you like to tell a few words about our association?
Yes, so as Polis, we are an organization that directly we do not work with migrants. We are an association that works in the field of digital and media competences. So we both are digital and media coaches and trainers. So this is our main field of actions. But for this project, we also work with migrants. We partnered with different organization, Foundation Salvation. There is an interesting name, but in Polish it doesn't rhyme like that. But yes, that organization is creating and it's conducting workshops, language workshops for migrants. And during our cooperation, we thought about how can we change a bit those workshops and their methodologies so that we can also use digital and media competences, digital and media skills, and how can we make those language workshops, language classes a bit more fun, interesting, and a bit more advanced when we think about using not only language competences but also media competences. And this is one of the things that we will be talking about today.
Yeah, and also we were using mostly these language classes to increase digital and media competences of our migrants. It's also important to say that the situation in Poland is that we have a lot or quite, we haven't migrants with no language competences. So they, of course, often can speak Polish at the beginning, but it's not so often, and it's not so now. Yeah, Veiko, my microphone is on. Do another participants hear me? Okay, Bob can hear me, so, and also Zino. So Veiko, it's maybe it will be good that you reload the page. We often use this platform with also our teachers. So and if other participants can hear me, so it's maybe some bug on your side.
Yes, we apologize for changing the usual YouTube tool, but since the current epidemic, we had to change the tool so that we could work together, but separately from our apartments, and YouTube doesn't have that function.
Yeah, so actually at the moment we was really thinking about changing the topic of this short discussion because I think that is a very huge challenge now to work with migrants and to do the workshops for them, but unfortunately it's not our area of interest. So we see a lot of different activities of Polish teachers because Polish schools are closed from 1 week, so now everybody starts to work from a distance and work online. But we do not have a knowledge about working with migrants. Actually, I think that most of them are at the moment cancelled. So, did you participate in our MOOC. Do you have any question at the moment, or do you want us to start from some presentation?
Yes, because we prepared some activities for you to elaborate on the subject of our methodology, but we're very curious about your feelings, your thoughts about our films, and more important for us, about our exercises. Any questions?
Yeah, Katarina is writing something, so we have to wait a moment. Maybe it's a question for us. Oh, a lot of questions. Okay. Okay, Katarina.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Veiko wrote that can hear only Zbyszek. So Zbyszek, maybe you can continue, and I will try to no, because I'm an organizer, so I cannot go on out.
Yeah, so that won't work. Okay, but if you have any questions, Veiko, you can ask them. I will then answer it. We can choose that I will be answering your question, since you hear me the best. And after that, we are recording this whole meeting. So if you will... if you all are having some difficulties or some problems, there should be both audios and both our voices in the recording. So if you lost something, don't... well, it won't...
Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry. It won't
we
be
also did a test before, so it should work. And actually, this platform is also one of the tools that we can polecić.
I recommend you
to use. It's Click Meeting. It's a Polish platform, but it's also with international language, so it's in English and in Spanish, for example, and it provides the possibility to organize webi for different group of person. And what is also really interesting, that now I can change the tribe to discussion, so you can just can tell something to us and show you to us, not only by writing, but also by using your mic. So in our MOOC, we mostly told you about Kolb cycle, because in our activities we mostly use active methods using Kolb. So Zbyszek, maybe you will tell us a few more words about cycle of Kolb, and why do you like to work with it?
Okay, so basically, I think that Kolb cycle is one of my favorites methods or tools. First of all, because it's a great tool or a great method to structurize your workshops. If you are planning some lessons, some workshops, you often think, okay, so if I want to create a workshop about hate speech, how should I prepare it? What should be the structure of my workshop? And it can be extremely hard if you have, like in the case of hate speech, there is a lot to talk about concerning hate speech. There is a lot of knowledge, a lot of material. So how can I structurize it? Well, the COPE cycle creates this kind of structure for us. So, for example, well, basically it's a cycle. So we start, for example, from the first part, which is an experience. So we start from an exercise that we plan. There should be an exercise with this kind of strong experience for our participants. Oh, great! The Basia is writing it on the whiteboard for us. So we start with an experience that should be an experience that will be meaningful to our participants. For example, I like to start my workshops on hate speech on how can we react to hate speech, or what would you do if you experience hate speech, so that everyone can put himself in the shoes of the person who is a victim of hate speech. And so this is the experience. This is the first step. The second step is a discussion, and it's extremely important step because after the experience we have to discuss what just happened, what we felt, how did we felt during this exercise, during this experience. So it's a great way also to communicate with our students, to ask about their opinions, about their feelings, and also about their current knowledge about, for example, hate speech or discrimination. Do they hear these terms? Do they know what does it mean? What does it mean? So this is the second step, and after that there is a knowledge. So it's the third step, and you can see that this third step, that is, to be honest, extremely important in all kinds of education, but in formal education it's usually at the top. It's the first step, the knowledge. We have to give something to our students. They have to learn. Right here it's in the form of the third step, the knowledge, and it's this kind of step that we, I don't know, for example, explain what is a hate speech. We give them the definitions, we give them theories, and this pack of knowledge that is a bit limited, because this knowledge should be used in the last step, which is the experimentation phase. In COPE, we have this experimentation phase, which is about bringing your knowledge and all that you have learned from previous steps into your actions. So, for example, if we are talking about the topic of hate speech, if we are after this experience of being the victim of hate speech, if we talk about our feelings, what happened, if we know what is hate speech, if we know about laws against hate speech in different countries, then we can, for example, experiment in the way that, okay, so how can we report hate speech? What should we do if we are the victim of hate speech? How can we react? So for me, it's a great structure for a teacher, for an educator, because it's a great way to plan my lessons, to plan my workshops, but I think it's also a great way to interest our participants, our students, that they will experience something, that they will not only learn, but they will also discuss the next subject, that we will also experiment on a given subject. So I think COPE is not only a great tool for a teacher or educator, but also a great way for students to get to know new lessons, new things, new knowledge. But I have to admit that I simplified it a little bit because I talk about the first step, the second step, and the third step. But that's how I do, and it's not exactly the law that you should work with co-op cycles and that you should start from the experience. To be honest, you can start from the second step, the discussion step, the knowledge, or from practice, experimentation phase. This is a cycle. So the most important thing is that you go through each part of the cycle. You can start from the experience because I think it's the best way to interest your students and all your audience. This is the way. This is this point of the workshop that you have their full attention. So it's a great way to start with it. But if you want to start with discussion, if you want to start with knowledge, or for example experimentation, it's also okay. You have to remember that all you have to do is go through the full cycle of co-op. So yeah, I think it summarizes the co-op cycle and also why I use it, why I think it's an important. But I also want to ask not only you, but also Basia, because we were talking about co-op cycle and how we will use it in our workshops. And I think it's also important questions on where in the cycle can you put a language competences. Like if we are talking about different subjects, different things, where is the place for the language competences? And
okay. So I think that actually in each phase of co-op cycle we can add some activities for migrants and to experience and to increase language competences as well, media and digital competences, because both language competences and media and digital competences is a kind of a subject that we have to learn. So it can work for each part. And for us, which we were mostly doing the workshop of media and digital competences, the experience when we have some activity to our participant to experience something. For example, I will show you now one photo. It's a photo of a wheel on a Vistula river in Warsaw. And it seems that it's quite real. Do you think it's really real wheel in Warsaw? What do you think? You can write it.
Okay, we see that Bob is right.
It looks real. Zbyszek, do you think it's real wheel?
It looks real, but...
Have you seen it?
I'm not quite sure if I have seen the well in our Vistula River.
Okay, so it seems really real, and actually, what is really also really interesting, it's a real photo, but the wheel isn't real. But if we want to talk, for example, a fake news, it's just a beginning. So we can show this photo from Warsaw. So we are from Warsaw. We are working with migrants in Warsaw. We can show them this photo and discuss if this wheel is real or not and why. And the background of this story is that it's a wheel, but it's not real. It's plastic one. And it was some climate changing action in Warsaw. So it's real photo with wheel, but it's not real wheel. So it's the beginning of starting the discussion. But first, we just have to sit and to talk if it's true or not true and why. So, for example, here we just give a possibility to experience the photo and then start the discussion. And the discussion, of course, depends of the level of language competencies of our migrants. If they are at the really basic level, so the discussion about wheel can be quite difficult, but in this side we can show them something else which is quite more easier for them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Do you have any questions so far regarding Kolb cycle or the language competences during Kolb cycle methodology?
If you have any question, you can all the time write them on our chat, so we just see it, so we can just answer. So Zbyszek, from which part of the cycle COP do you usually start?
I start from the experience. I think it's the best way to win the audience, as you can say. This is the part that is always engaging the audience, the students, and I always create my workshops or plan my workshops and lessons with a strong exercise so that they could really get to know some feelings about some topics where people can put themselves in different situations, in different shoes that, for example, they can imagine how it is like to be a victim of hate speech or hate crimes, or, for example, my workshops concerning not hate speech but fake news. I also started with fake news. Like I gave my students an article about it was even about me, and it was a fake news that I was the first person that was I was punished by the court for trolling. That I was the first person in Poland that was punished by the court for trolling, and we discussed if it's true, if it can be true, and this feeling of you that you in some way were tricked by some news, that you were mistaken. It's also a feeling that from which we start our workshops concerning fake news. So I think it's a great way to start the Kolb cycle from the experience. And the other reason is for me even more important. I mean, we are trainers, we are educators, we have a tendency to talk a lot. I also have this tendency, as you can hear. So when I work with Kolb cycle, the first two steps are the steps where I am silent. Like I'm not a trainer, I'm not an educator, I'm there as a more like a facilitator. My students and the participants are the ones who are in the leading role during these phases. So I think it's a great way to silence the trainer or to silence the teacher who have this tendency to talk a lot, and it's a great way to give the voice to your students. So I always highly recommend to start from the experience.
Okay, thank you. I also show you the breaking news, the one Zbyszek was talking about. This one is about me and about my house on the moon, and it's also look like a screen from some web page or even some television news. So it's really easy to prepare it. Of course, we can do it with some graphic design program, but it's also a web that give you a possibility to prepare it, and I will show it right now. It's here. Look. The website is breakyourownnews.com. You just can write the headline you invent, the ticker, and you can even choose a photo, just remembering about the rights to the photos. Pixabay, it's a good library with 3 photos you can just use. And you can show it to your group, or even you can ask group to prepare their own fake news, just to show them how easy it is, because it's a really simple exercise which we start, but then we can create next activities.
Katarina wrote that she too likes to start with experience, because students learn very good when they are involved and may reflect on what they did. The best is if they start asking questions before you start explaining. I totally agree. So yeah, great. I think we are on the same page. That it's a great way, but there is also this subject of questions, and I think they are extremely important. And I would also like to ask you, if you have any questions regarding Cope Cycle, please write it. We are constantly looking for them. But I want to also ask you, and maybe also you, Basia, what are the best questions for you to ask during Cope Cycle? Like when we are during this phase of discussion, from which we should start during our exercise. What should we ask our students? How can we involve them in this process?
Katarina, do you also play on the reflection between picture and title? For us, it's all very important, especially in the working. Yeah, of course. Also about title and rest of the text, Katarina, because it's mostly that we now often read only the titles and know the rest of the text, and the title is often not exactly about the text, it's inside. So we have also this reflection between the picture and the title and so on.
Yes, you can also, it's a great way to show them also the tools like, for example, image search with Google, that you can search by an image and you can compare if this image, this picture, this photo wasn't previously published on other websites during or regarding other subjects. There is a lot of fake news based on previous or old photos with new titles, and because of that completely new meanings. So it's also a great way to show them a new and useful tool.
Okay. Yeah. So you asked me about the question I ask in the cycle call. So I often start with really easy ones. So what do you think about this experience? It's really easy, but it's really opening, and participants just start to talk. And if not, I ask also how they feel. What do you feel after this experience? What do you think people is real in this situation can feel? And what what knowledge about the life on somebody is giving to us, and then the most specific depends of the experience. Would you add another question? Now I'm thinking about them.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Would you add some other question?
Okay, so like for me, the most important question is how they feel. Like I think that it's also an extremely inclusive question, because you can or cannot have knowledge about something. You can or cannot have an opinion about something, but almost everyone can have feelings about something, can tell you how they feel during this exercise. And it's a great exercise for me, because it's also, it teaches empathy. So we talk about different kind of language and media competences, but I think empathy is an extremely important competence, or I don't know, maybe also a skill that we should practice especially in the field of internet or media, when we talk about netiquette or, for example, hate speech. We can't talk about the subject without empathy. So I think it's one of the most important questions. And the other question is that I would like to ask is, what would you do? Because it's like a car or like a vehicle that leads us to the next phase, the next steps, which is the knowledge, and also how can you react, so the phase of experimentation. So it's also a great question that comes with, you know, generating ideas, generating experiments, and with it we can fluently go further. Okay, and I would even like to go further and show you one more thing, unless you have some questions during regarding this part. Okay. I don't see anyone writing. If you have any questions, just write. But since we are talking about Kolb cycle and different ways how can you implement it in your workshops or your lessons, we also talk about experiments. This, for me, the last phase of the workshops, and how can we create this kind of experiment for students or for our participants. For example, in a hate speech, during hate speech workshops or during hate speech subject, I like to think about the questions, what can we really do if we are the victim of hate speech? So how can we get all this new knowledge, all things that we learn, and how can we use it to for some part combat this situation? So if we, for example, if we see that there is a internet comment with hate speech, as you can see on our screen, how can we, I don't know, delete it? How can we combat hate speech on the internet? And it's a great way to give this kind of internet examples of internet comments for our participants, give them links, give them some prepared content, and ask them, what can you do? Do you know? Because a lot of people have social media Facebooks, but if they know that, how can they report this kind of comment? And for a lot of you, I think it's something easy, but for many people who have this social media profiles, it's not that easy. A lot of people didn't know that they can report something and how to do that. So it's a great way to navigate people from for this exercise. So as you can see, Basia is doing it right now. We can click on the top of the comment on the right, and we just click on report that post.
Yeah, find support or report, and then we can just select the reason we want to report it. And
yes.
We just can do this really quick exercise, because here can be spam, because it's only example. And just then we will wait for the answer from Facebook. So we know that probably for you is quite obvious and natural, but we just wanted to show that this experimentation phase, this practice can be quite easy and quick.
Yes, and even if this is, as an exercise, a bit simple, from that we can show another cases or another tools, like, for example, the tool that I'm currently sending you in a chat, which is Zgłoś Nienawiść. It's a Polish portal for reporting hate crimes and hate speech on the internet. I will try to show you this. Okay. Or maybe it's not so easy. Basia, can you help me?
Yeah, sure. It will be the last thing we will show you.
Yeah.
Of if you have any, a to musisz ty wyjść z tamtego trybu. Of if you have any other question, we will answer them, but then our half an hour just finished few minutes ago, so. Zbyszek, did you?
Yeah, I'm trying.
No. So nothing.
Okay, so Bob is writing.
But yeah, you just can click the link and see it. It's quite easy. It's also in English, so you can use it. Yeah. Thank you, Bob. We also are finishing. If you have any other question, Katarina, Veiko, Zino, we will glad to answer. And if not, yeah, don't trust the whole picture. Okay, so thank you so much. It was really half an hour have this conversation with you, Zbyszek. So thank you, and thank all the participants. And we'll put this video on the MOOC.